Welcome to AM Best Audio.
I'm John Weber for Best Review Magazine, and I'm speaking today to Darcie Truttmann. Darcie is a senior consulting actuary for Pinnacle Actuarial Resources. Darcie, so glad you could join us today.
Thank you, John.
Darcie, what are the main takeaways of the APCIA's new guidance for auditors relying on the work product of actuaries?
The main takeaway is they did change some language around when you need a specialist and things like that, but that's not a major change. The major change and thing that needs to happen going forward is that management needs to understand why they're selecting the reserves, needs to understand and support why they're selecting the reserves where they are, particularly when the held reserves or held unpaid liabilities are different from the actual central estimate, because that's when the auditor will ask questions most likely. So they need to know what goes into the estimate and be able to explain it and explain why they are deviating from the central estimate if they are.
How will the new guidance further encourage management's confidence in the reliability and credibility of actuarial estimates?
Well, that's a good question, because the change in the guidance doesn't at all affect what an actuary does in our reserve analysis. However, the change makes management understand it further, which hopefully will then increase the confidence. And it doesn't directly affect how the actuary does the analysis. However, hopefully it does indirectly affect it, because we'll get more communication from management. And the hope is, at least on my side, is that we will understand the exposures and the risks that we're estimating even more. So maybe different selections or different methods that we use will change based on more information that we're getting from management, just from the need for them to communicate more and fully understand what's going into the analysis. So hopefully, if they have structural changes or changes in how they set the reserves, the hope is that we find out about that sooner. We select methods accordingly. Management understands why those changes are being made, and we communicate more to them so that they can support the estimates that they go forward with on their balance sheet.
Darcie, what if the benchmark data provided by the organization does not support the estimate?
Well, then that will cause an inaccurate assessment or estimate. So again, good communication so that the actuary fully understands the risks and selects the benchmark correctly is needed here. And the hope, again, is that this encourages more communication, and we, as actuaries, fully understand the risks and fully understand the exposures so that the benchmarks correctly reflect the risks that we're trying to estimate. And going forward, our estimates will be even more accurate than they obviously already are.
From the auditor's perspective, what are the key considerations in evaluating the reasonableness of management's selected point estimate for unpaid claim liabilities, particularly when there are deviations from actuarial estimates?
The actuary or the auditor should look at which management should be able to point this out, things that have changed in the data that would make management differ from the central estimate. As an actuary, as long as their estimate, their held unpaid liabilities are within our range, we are fine with that. As an auditor, obviously they want to dig deeper and know if it's not the central estimate. Things can affect why management might select higher in the range. If they've had a lot of adverse development in multiple years in a row, an actuary will adjust our estimates and our selections and assumptions for that, but we might not adjust it as fast as management maybe thinks we should, because actuaries are more conservative and need, lots of data stacked up in order to completely change assumptions like that. So maybe management decides to select higher in the range due to this adverse development. And so they should be able to relay this to an auditor to explain why they're in a higher estimate. Or they can look at the expected versus actual outcome of the data. And that would be another thing that they could point out to auditors. And auditors could ask management for these things. But in the change in the principle, it is that management should be able to provide this ahead of time, and an auditor needs this when they change their estimate from the central. So an auditor, I'm sure, knows to look for these things. It'll be management being able to provide this to an auditor and supporting when their estimate differs.
So, Darcie, how might the new guidance impact the working relationship between actuaries and auditors?
I think that there will be more communication throughout. Even though we're providing this to management and management is providing it to the auditor, hopefully it just becomes a more collaborative process where, because lots of times, sometimes auditors will get information about changes in the company and the actuary won't, or vice versa. But now the hope is that everybody gets all of the information. We all know what's happening with the risks and exposures, if the exposures are expanding and things like that, instead of just the actuary knowing they're writing in a new state. Hopefully the auditors also know it. So I think it'll improve relationships, just the communication throughout the entire process. At least that's the hope.
Darcie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you.
That was Darcie Truttmann, Senior Consulting Actuary for Pinnacle Actuarial Resources. And I'm John Weber for Best Review Magazine.
Looking to get the full attention of the insurance industry? We have the platforms that will do just that. Whether it be AM Best TV, AM Best Audio, Best Review Magazine, or Best Day. Find out more by calling AM Best Advertising Sales at 908-439-2200, extension 5399, and have a great day.